In this video, we're going to have a look at how to debug a complicated formula by evaluating it only part by part. Here we have a problem where I'm convinced I've got the correct formula, which is meant to go and sum the largest 3 items for each salesperson. And as you can see through the conditional formatting, the 3 months for each different salesperson might be different. And I've got this formula, which is clearly providing blank cells everywhere. However, by simply adding up the top 3, for example, the salesperson Anne, I can quite clearly see that the sum is above 10,000. And yet here where I'm testing if it is above 10,000, I'm not getting the answer of bonus. And I can see that all of these are in fact the wrong answer. So I need to evaluate this formula to try and see where I've made an error. So let's do this together. Before we start, I'm going to press Ctrl+6 to highlight the speech bubble. And now we can go into the formula, pressing F2 to go into edit mode. Now there's 2 main approaches to this. You can dissect the formula using edit mode and clicking inside the formula with your mouse, or you can use the evaluate formula tool in the formulas tab, and we'll have a look at both. You'll notice that if you click within a formula or a function, Excel will bring up the function arguments tooltip, and the item highlighted in bold will indicate the current argument that you are on. To select an entire argument, simply use your mouse to hover over until you have the pointer icon, and then click your mouse, and Excel will select everything that goes into that argument. So for example, if our first step over here was to test the if function, we can quite clearly see there is our logical test. The value, if that's true, should say bonus, and the value of false is double quote, in other words, a null text string. So the if function looks like it's working correctly. And quite clearly over here, I'm getting falses for everything since I have only null text strings. So the next part will be to look into the sum function. And to do that, I need to click anywhere after the open parenthesis for the sum function. So as you can see over here, the first number is the entire array, and that's where it ends. If I then move into the large, I can check the array and all of the different largest items I'm requesting. And then we have the logical operator, which is performing the logical test. And I'm imagining that since our value of true and the value of false look correct, the problem must be within this logical question. So let's go into this step by step, looking at some of the other key visual indicators that Excel provides us with. Let's start within the large function. I'm giving the correct array starting at January, ending at June. I'm asking for the top 3 items. I can simply highlight everything in the large, and we know exactly where to end because you'll notice the purple bracket as we move over it. The closing purple bracket is also highlighted, indicating to us that if we highlight from that last parenthesis and press F9, we should be able to at least make sure that that is working correctly. And as we can see, it is in fact looking in and extracting the top 3 numbers. If we then do the next part, looking at this red parenthesis, all the way until this red parenthesis, and highlight everything over here, and press F9, we can see we get an answer of 0. And that is why we are simply getting a false, which actually means that this logical test is not in fact a logical test at all. This should be providing either a true or a false. And if you haven't seen the answer by now, let's quickly go and look at this using the Evaluate Formulas tool in the Formulas tab of the ribbon. This dialog box allows us to evaluate the actual formula. And the nice thing about this dialog box as compared to the method that we used is that this will by default evaluate in the correct order as Excel actually performs the calculations. So as we can see, the underlined indicates the first calculation that will be performed, and it returns the correct numbers. The next set of underlined figures is the next calculation that's being done. And if we press evaluate, we'll see that in fact the logical operation is being done before the sum function. And that is why it evaluates to a 0. because false is the same as 0, we have the sum of 3 zeros. So I'm sure you've now identified what the problem is. This final bracket should in fact be before the logical operator. Now if we click on logical test, we should get a single true or false, because this entire set of calculations, including the sum of the largest 3 numbers, should be being done before we compare to the total level of $10,000. And now if we press Ctrl Z and highlight the entire logical test and then press F9, we now can see we are getting a true or a false, and that will drive the value of true and the value of false. So that is looking much better. And we can go ahead and press enter and copy this formula all the way down. And as we can see, we've now got the correct answer. And all it took was the placement of one of the closing parentheses. So as you can see, using some of these techniques of using your mouse, clicking within your formula and function, and using your mouse to select entire arrays, as well as moving over the parentheses, noting the visual indication as to the start and end point. Those together with the evaluate formula tool allow you to identify if Excel is doing the calculations in the expected order and using the correct references. So hopefully with these techniques, you'll be able to debug all of your complicated formulas and functions part by part, getting to the correct answer. We'll see you in the next video.